Hey everybody, it's me, IR Smart, on a Tuesday. You know, that never really happens. Anyway, I've been thinking about Star Wars, as I usually do. Anyway, I was thinking, I've already done a ranking of my favorite movies, which you've probably already seen. I did it in the 100 subscriber, or 200, I did it in the Q&A thing I did. Anyway, in that I ranked my favorite Star Wars movies. And that took into account just my personal bias, which ones I liked more than the other. However, today I'm going to do something slightly different than that, because I'm going to rank the Star Wars movies based on how good they are. Now, this does not take into account personal bias, or else Episode 3 would be at the top. And in this ranking, Episode 3 is not at the top. You see, for this ranking, I'm taking into account lots of different factors, how good the writing is, the story, that sort of thing, you know, and pretty much just how well received they are by Star Wars fans as a whole. I'm just taking from all different opinions, and this is going to be kind of difficult because there's a lot of people that like the prequels, and a lot of people that don't like the prequels, a lot of people that like the sequels, a lot of people that don't like the sequels. I'm trying to balance that out, and I've found out a kind of a trend in a graph, and I'm going to explain that graph here. So, I got this whiteboard, right? And I literally just found this in the attic of my house. I don't even know where this came from. It was just here. Like, look at this. There's this massive whiteboard here. Alright, can you see that? Okay, so anyway, am I in focus? Camera, please? Can I please be in focus? Give it a sec. There we go. Okay. All set. So basically, I'm going to make a graph here. Very straight lines, as you can tell. Okay, can you see that? No, you can't, because it's not in focus. Seriously, camera, work with me today. Hello? I'm back here. Autofocus should be working. Alright, it's not working. Sorry, everybody. Aha! Okay, now can you focus on the graph? I think it's good now. Okay, so the way this graph works is up on the y-axis here. We have how good the movie is. So we have a scale of good to bad. Alright, so we have good movies up here and bad movies up here. Now, this graph on the bottom is going to be for the movies in chronological order, not release order, chronological order. Keep that in mind. So of course over here we have episode 1, and over here we have episode 9. So we're going in the movies in chronological order. Now I've discovered something very interesting, that the movies actually make a sort of bell curve, alright? So it goes from kind of like this. Oh, sliding. And then up like this, and then down like that. So you may be seeing this like, alright, what does that mean though? What it means is that episode 1 is a bad movie. A lot of people like it, but if you've actually watched episode 1, it's kind of painful to watch, because not much happens, it's really not enjoyable, and there's a lot of issues with it. So that's why episode 1 is down here on the bad part. So next, let's move on to episode 2. Episode 2 gets to be a little higher on the graph, because episode 2 is a little bit better. The whole first 2 parts of the movie are bad, but the third part, when you get to Geonosis, that's actually pretty good. However, there's still a lot of bad stuff in it, so you just kind of have to deal with that. Next, we're going to move on to episode 3. Here it kind of ramps up. You see, it's gone way up, because 3 is considered the good one of the prequels. Personally, it's my favorite Star Wars movie, but a lot of people wouldn't agree with that. So that's why it's here on the bell curve. because it's still pretty good. However, a lot of people don't like it. Next, we're going to move on to episode 4. You can see 4 is all the way up here. That's getting close to a near perfect score. Episode 4 is up here. The originals are considered to be very good. 4, it had to start everything off, and especially for the time, you can see all the special effects and everything. It was just really amazing a movie. And overall, the plot and storyline is still really good. It establishes the characters well. You get to know the universe well. It has to establish Star Wars as a whole, and it does a good job. So that's why episode 4 is up here. Now, episode 5. Episode 5, if we ask most people, they will tell you that episode 5 is their favorite. And to most Star Wars fans, it's regarded as the easily best Star Wars movie. And I would agree with that. It's not my favorite. Whiteboard, work with me. It's not my favorite, but it's a good one. Because it's just a really good sequel. It builds off the world of the first one, builds off the characters. We get to see pretty much every character development. Every character gets character development. And it introduces new characters and builds upon them. And we get new planets, new worlds, new ideas. And we get to see the bad guys being the bad guys, that being the Empire. Now I could get into that sort of thing, but that's not what we're here for. They're the villains in this story, so that's how I'll address them. Even though I don't see the Empire as a villain, because I'm part of the Empire. Anyway, that's beyond the point. So yeah, we get to see, and of course we get the biggest reveal of all time, that Luke Skywalker is the son of Darth Vader. Big thing, huge, amazing. Episode 5 is definitely considered near perfect by a lot of people. Now unfortunately, the whiteboard would work with me, it kind of tails off from here. So we go on to episode 6, we see it's a bit worse. It's still pretty good. However, the entire first part of the movie is kind of a mess. Jabba's palace is usually pretty fun, but if you actually look at it, it's just kind of hard to watch more than once. Luke's plan makes no sense, because he sends in the droids, and then Lando's already there, like undercover or something, and then he shows up and gets captured, and they all go on a sail barge, and then eventually they just save Han. Like, his plan makes no sense. But anyway, that's beyond the point. The Endor stuff is pretty good. I really like, that's all good. I'm trying to keep my opinion out of this. I like this movie, but it's also just a good movie. We get to see more of the characters, and it's a good finale. And we get to see Palpatine in this movie. Pretty much every scene with Palpatine is gold in episode 6, so that's great, of course. And then, yeah. 6 is pretty good, but it's kind of eh. And with most people who ask, they will usually tell you that episode 6 is the weakest of the originals. I'm sorry. So anyway, next we're gonna move on to episode 7. Episode 7. It's not bad. I actually watched it the other day. There's a lot of problems with it, but it's definitely better than the other 2 sequel movies. It's not my favorite, and if anything, I find it kind of boring, but it's a decent movie. It introduces a lot of new things into Star Wars. We get to see some new interesting characters, and also builds upon the old ones a little bit. There's a lot of problems with 7, and for many reasons, and that's, a lot of people just don't like what they did with it. Like, a lot of people are upset about Han, about Rey being a Mary Sue. I'm not going to get into that in this video. But yeah, a lot of people just don't like a lot of things about it, which a lot of people usually put it way lower, but I'm just looking at how good the movie itself is. Just watching it objectively like I did. I watched it the other day, and I tried to get rid of all bias and just watch it, and it wasn't half bad. So that's why it gets kind of a middle. It's not bad, but it's not good. Right here in the middle. Now we move on to episode 8. 8 is pretty bad. There are a lot of problems with 8. I think the plot as a whole just is confusing and hard to follow. A lot of the decisions the characters make don't make sense. We have the entire Canto Bight sequence, which is just a waste of time. Now, there are some redeeming qualities in this movie. A lot of people don't point this out. Personally, I've actually learned to really appreciate the Luke scenes. A lot of people think that Luke was mischaracterized in 8. Personally, I don't think so. But that would be getting into bias and opinion, which is not what this is about. This is just looking at how good the movie itself is. I think for what it's trying to do, it explains the Luke thing very well. You know, whether or not you agree with how they characterize Luke, I think they did it in the movie very well, explaining it and that sort of thing. As well as the directing in this movie is very good. It's the most beautiful looking Star Wars movie, I would say. Like, if you watch episode 8, there are some really good shots. Like, some of the movie just looks really good a lot of the time. Yeah, very dynamic, and of course we get some really cool special effects scenes like the hyperspeed thing, which a lot of people think the hyperspeed ramming is stupid. I would agree with that. However, it looks cool. So that's why 8's here. It's not the worst, but it's pretty bad. So anyway, next is episode 9. Actually, wait, okay, yeah, there's episode 9. It fell off the whiteboard. I cannot put it any lower. I physically can't put it lower. Basically, episode 9 is the worst Star Wars movie ever. You may think that's very opinionated, but it is honestly just a really bad movie. A lot of people like it, and I don't fault you for liking it. There are a lot of things I like in 9. It's a fun movie to watch. However, it's awful, and the plot makes no sense at multiple points. I'm sure a lot of you have probably already, made up your minds and stuff about 9, but you really do have to admit it's bad. There are a few redeeming qualities. The Palpatine is not explained well as coming back, and if you actually want to figure this stuff out, you have to look it up. Like, if you want to figure out, oh, how is Palpatine actually related to Rey? It's besides oh, by the way, we're related. And if you want to know how, you have to look that up in a book or something that Disney released outside. You want to know how Palpatine survived? Oh, that's also in this, extended extra book thing, or look it up on our Twitters, that sort of thing. It's really weird. I don't like how they did that. I wish they would have just explained that in the actual movie I paid to go see, instead of having to go find something else to answer a question I had. Whatever. Also, the entire first and second parts of the movie are just super rushed. Then once you get to the third act, it's pretty good. I do like the third act. That's just me. And pretty much everything with Palpatine, plot and story-wise, makes no sense, but it's kind of fun to watch. And of course, we're looking at plot and story, described as a whole. So yeah, as a whole, this is the definitive ranking of Star Wars movies, and it's right. This is 100% correct. You really can't argue with this. You can maybe put them a little higher or lower, but for the most part, it follows this bell curve shape, where the prequels get progressively better, the originals stay about the same. They're all pretty good. And then the sequels get progressively worse. Now, if this were to take into account how much enjoyment you can get out of them, 9 would be a lot higher. And then, of course, some of the other ones, I would put 7 a bit lower for enjoyment. Originals would stay pretty much the same. 3 would go up way more for me, because I personally really enjoy it. But yeah, enjoyment is not taken into this graph. You can watch and enjoy a lot of movies. You can watch and enjoy bad movies. There's no problem with that. I just want to admit that the prequels and the sequels have a lot of bad in them. But that doesn't say there isn't good in them. There is good in these. So, yeah. Anyway, this is the definitive ranking. I would say if you disagree with me, leave a comment, but it's impossible to disagree with me, because these are facts. These are solid facts. I used a whiteboard. You can't disagree with me. Anyway, that's all I had for this video. I hope the camera's in focus. I can't really tell. I can't see out of this thing. So I'm just hoping the camera was in focus that whole time. Anyway, bye everybody.